Roy Smith is our market analyst this week. The U.S. Department of Agriculture latest crop progress report was issued on Monday. Cold and snowy weather kept producers out of the fields as only 3% of the U.S. corn crop was planted last week. The U.S. estimate is up just 1 percentage point from the week prior and is behind the 5-year average of 5%. For Nebraska, farmers have planted an estimated 1% of the corn crop, which is behind the 5-year average of 2% during this time of the year. Due to the continued cold weather, some traders now wonder if the markets will notice the crop progress slipping behind. We spoke with Roy Tuesday afternoon and began by asking him about the recent reports.
It's always interesting this time of year to look at those markets and look at the analysts and what they have to say. You always hear some of the analysts talking about, well, this bunch of farmers planted this much, and this part of the state they planted that much. When in reality, the numbers are so small and the effect is so marginal that it really doesn't matter. Farmers are going to plant what they plant, and that'll probably always be that way because some farmers have a liking for corn and some farmers have a liking for beans, and when all is said and done, it's going to be 50-50 probably.
One of the things you talk about this time of year is selling new crop and old crop as we go through April and into May. Tell us why that is.
Well, my theory is that certain times of the year you need to be taking action, and certain times of the year you need to avoid taking action. And here we are around the 1st of April to the 1st of May, and we've seen soybeans rally like 50 cents a bushel. And if you're waiting for a rally in either the corn or soybean market, here it is. Don't waste it by not doing anything.
We do see some of those long-term charts showing exactly what you were saying. When it comes to percentages somebody should be considering that new crop and old crop as we move through these months, how much would you recommend?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't really recommend anything. But secondly, it really depends on your cash flow and what works in with your crop rotations. And in Nebraska, at least in the eastern part of Nebraska, those crop rotations are a very important factor because frankly most farmers plant what they're expected to plant. So you might have somebody in Cass County, like we are now, that would plant 50% of corn and 50% of soybeans. And if you go to North Platte or Ogallala or somewhere like that, they're probably looking at 10% soybeans and 40% corn. So there's a whole lot of factors in there that are really interesting, but they don't amount to much.
You and I are standing here in Coates in the middle of April. Does the weather get to be a concern for you when you look at the way the markets react to that as well?
Well, does it become a factor? No, my perception is that everybody thinks it's a factor, but it really isn't. When all said and done, how the crop progressed through the growing season is a lot more important than how much of each one of those crops are raised.
We'll get back to weather here in a moment. One of the things you like to say is always forward contract corn specifically on May 1st. Tell us why that is.
Well, it's pretty simple. Year in and year out, the 1st of May has been a good time to sell corn. My theory that I've developed over the years is you should be forward contracting corn. Some corn, how much, that's up to the manager. But for soybeans, you never sell soybeans in February because year in and year out, that has never been the highest price of the year. So if you're looking for selling soybeans, do it sooner or later, but don't do it in February.
What are the big things you want people to be looking at constantly as we continue through April and then into May?
Well, it's pretty easy to look at a chart and say, well, you should have planted so many acres of corn, you should have planted so many acres of soybeans. But really what I prefer farmers to do is base their planting intentions on the crop that you've just put in the ground. You know you're going to harvest it. At least you hope you know you're going to harvest it, so that has to be a factor. Having the right balance, so to speak, that has to be a factor. But in reality, the big thing is what are the markets going to do in July and August, when the weather really will have an effect on them. And you would hope that some people, most people, have some forward contracted. They got bin space for some, and they need to be basing their realistic expectations on those factors.